Well, welcome to the Empowered to Connect podcast, where we come together to discuss a healing-centered approach to engagement and well-being for ourselves, our families, and our communities. I'm JD Wilson, and I am your host. And today on the show, we talk with old friend Tom Jordi about how to take play seriously. So Mo, Ottinger, and I talked with Tom today about how to make sure that play is an essential part of your relationship with your kids. Obviously, we know it is important. We know it is something that we all need. It is, however, sometimes difficult to muster that play within us when we need to correct something or when we are just tired. So we talked with Tom all about that. He is someone that painfully knows the price that he had to pay at different times for taking play seriously, including breaking his ankle. On a COVID social distancing sticker. So you'll hear reference to that. That's what that's from. You can go back to our last episode with Jordis to hear that story. But Tom is a great friend and just a wonderful, wonderful professional. You'll hear all about his work in South Africa. You'll also hear about he and his wife, Dawn, and their kids and just the way they've incorporated play into their parenting. It's great, and you're going to love it. So if you've never listened to an episode with Jordis before, you are going to love Tom and his sense of humor and just his transparency and vulnerability. And so glad we get to have him on today. Now, without any further ado, here he is, and Mo Ottinger is, and I am talking about how to take play seriously. Well, okay, as promised, we've got the great Tom Jordi with us here today. And he is in a sweater. You can't see that, obviously, if you were listening on the podcast, but he's in a sweater because it is winter. And so I will disclaim at the very beginning of this episode, one of our questions we realized was a super American question about seasons, about summer. And it's not summer in South Africa, Tom. And so, we'll edit that question out just a little bit, but Tom is with us. Tom and his wife, Dawn, are Cultivate Connection Facilitators in outside of Johannesburg, South Africa. And we are just thrilled for him to be with us today and to talk just a few minutes about taking play seriously. If you have been listening for a while, you will know kind of the reason that we wanted to think about Tom for this individual episode was just that he is so good at taking play seriously that sometimes he even sacrifices bones and suffers major injuries in the course of taking play very seriously. And so we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But without any further ado, Tom, how are you? Thanks for being with us.
It's great to be with you guys, as always.
Mo is with us as well. And so why don't we start with this? Before we jump into conversation, I'll kind of read the connecting practice kind of as we've got it written out. Again, just a subtle nod to the Connecting Practices Handbook, which Tom has got in his hands right now. If you don't have it yet, it's an awesome resource. You should get it. The link's in our show notes. You can go to the website. It's great. So when we take play seriously, obviously this is something that is not just for kids. Kids and adults need to play. And we've got three core components that we want to practice when we're taking play seriously. So we want to think through these things as kind of our filter for how do we decide or how do we kind of guide ourselves in this if this is something that we don't naturally do super well. And so those core components are playing to connect. So even when you're in seasons of feeling conflict, frustration, or annoyance, trying to find ways, working to find ways to play together, playing to cultivate growth. So kids obviously learn so much through play. So from language development to academic development, social and emotional development, all of that's promoted through healthy play. And we also want to play to redirect. And so we need to lay down the law. Sometimes we need to set boundaries. We need to make sure that there's correction when there is a misstep, but we can redirect minor misbehaviors with playful interactions. And when we do that, it can disarm fear and keep the train moving, keep from help you avoid some of those massive meltdowns that come over really small things. And so that is kind of how we define taking play seriously. And so I think, before we really jump into it, Tom, for people who have not listened to you guys before and don't know you, would you just kind of set the stage for how, what you do professionally, you and Dawn in South Africa, and then how you got introduced to ETC?
Cool. Yeah. Well, Dawn is the best mom in South Africa. I'll say it so nobody gets upset. So I'm the only one in South Africa. And she does that. 3 of our kids at home are homeschooled, and one is started high school this year. So, and he's gone off to high school. And I am what's called here a specialist wellness counselor. So essentially, I do counseling, and I'll engage primarily with schools. And then in my private practice, I tend to engage more with adults for various things. And so, the ETC and then TBRI principles have become very useful in that context, especially with I think in South Africa, I think there's about 5 TBRI practitioners in the whole of the country. I think should be 1 or 2 in Joburg. And ETC was something we connected with. Our first adoption happened 10 years ago. And then, like all of us, we just realized that a couple of tools in this toolbox seem to have fallen out on the way, or they just weren't cutting it. And then I think along the way, got connected with the Connected Child and heard about Dr. Karen Purvis and that sort of thing. And we went to a simulcast of one of the Party Connect conferences. And then from that, we just thought, these tools are great. We want to learn more. And we were blessed enough to come over to the States and meet you guys and do the training there. And I think that's about 4 or 5 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And then we've just taken it from there and done training here. And I think it's nice as well because through COVID, we were able to do stuff online, and being in a useful time zone, we also got to connect with people that the States was too far for them, but they could connect with us. So that was quite fun and unique to have that opportunity, and just also to facilitate that training with people who honestly never heard of a lot of these tools and a lot of these approaches to just supporting these kids from difficult places and that. So that's where we are. And as I said to you earlier, I entered the room in Memphis as a finance guy, and now I'm really doing in more of a psychology space. So it's been an interesting, and it's all on the back of this stuff, just really speaking to us as a family and just making us realize that there's a need for it, and families who are in desperate need of support and tools, and it gives that. So that's been really great.
I love that. I want to know from your perspective, what's your favorite thing when you think about kind of taking play seriously? Do you have a favorite element of that, or a reason that you enjoy this particularly?
I think for me, my big one is the disarm sphere. That is my number one thing. And just how it's, those 3 components of playing to connect, to cultivate growth, and to redirect. I think for me, the biggest one is, and I use it often with kids, is to connect and to redirect. And I think it's so great because anyone can do it. You don't need to have some snazzy qualification, or you don't have to, be super skilled in a certain area. We know how to play. We know how to get down and just have a bit of fun with kids. And it's amazing how you can just see the lights turn on. They're practically, it's some schools I'll be called to a classroom where a child is absolutely melting down, and that he just got to get busy with the other 20 of them. And, within a minute or two, by simply playing, you put a ball into the space, you pull some Lego in front, you're connecting, and in what can sometimes feel like, am I actually doing anything of a professional nature here? Because from the outside, it looks like a guy's just playing. But the way that it helps you connect and just disarm fear, that for me is key. I don't enter a session with a child without planning to play. It opens a door. It doesn't matter if it's a young one, older, even sort of touching on teenage. It just opens up a way that they can connect with you, and they feel safe to do that. So that is mine. That disarms fear, absolutely.
Mo, what about you? When you think about that, I mean, I also think of you as somebody who does this really well, and you've been parenting for a while and through, a variety of situations and coaching other families here and all that. Like, do you have a favorite element of that, or is there a reason you gravitate toward that well?
Yeah, it's interesting because I watched a dad with a kid the other day, and they were he was trying to navigate his son through the parking lot, and like he was having such a hard time, getting from the building to the car. And like, I just remember the days that of parenting that every transition, every move, everything was just such a deep struggle. And realizing that play is the language of children, and it's like so much can be avoided through play, and everything does not have to escalate, and everything does not have to be a battle. And so I think just for me, learning how I play, learning how my kids play, and being able, like Tom said, it's about connection at the end of the day. And so, I mean, sitting down and playing with a kid first thing in the morning can set the tone at our house for the whole day. And it's because they've now connected with dad, right? A game of Uno at the breakfast table, there's a connection. And once there's a connection, it's just, it sets the tone. So again, the power of play, it is, I can't stress it enough. I mean, I know there's some quote probably by Stuart Brown, but play is not this extra add-on. Play is kind of the core of who we are, and it's the core activity that we need to do. And Tom said it, it's about felt safety. And when there's felt safety for a child, felt safety between an adult and a child, then the relationship changes. And we were joking before we came on, both JD and I have become cat parents separately, not planned.
And we're not co-parenting cats.
We're not co-parenting cats. We have our own cats. And it's interesting. I've thought about play so much and felt safety with this little cat that we found. And it is amazing now with felt safety, just how the play has taken off with just this little animal. And the same is true for all of us. When there is felt safety, however we play, the relationship just goes smoother. It's there's a depth to it, and things open up.
It's amazing to see the kid's eyes just turn on. I mean, the idea when I go to meet with the teacher or something, and the child's playing up, and you need to get them from A to B, and they're trying to like tussle this ball with arms and legs that are going everywhere. And the moment you can say, okay, do you want to walk like a ninja or fly like a rocket? All of a sudden, the eyes just explode, and like, oh, I want to be a rocket. You go,
yeah.
It's like, and they look at you like, what? It's like, it's going to work, because it's
right. Right. Well, and I think, I think back when I was at school and like in a school setting professionally, and you're right. There are times you feel like a total fraud when you were like frog walking down the hall with a kid that was just threatening to beat up the entire class. Right.
Yeah.
And teacher's like, guy's so soft, never punishes the kid, never suspends him. Look at this. He's playing with them. Like he gets reward. That's why he behaves this way. And then
permissive.
A couple months down the road, it's like, student of the week and student of the month. And like, well, he's really turned into a leader in the classroom. I mean, how did this happen? Mm-hmm. Frog walking had a part in, I'll tell you that much.
The power of frog walking.
That's what we should have named it. So let me ask you this, Tom. Do you feel like, I guess the end of that question kind of plays right into this next question, but what do you think are some of the common misconceptions, missteps when it comes to taking play seriously? Like, do you feel like when you guys are teaching this principle in class, do you feel like there's a way to kind of guide through that?
I think people have got, I think you're breaking sort of these almost golden calf parenting rules. Mm. We want to have fun, but when there's a time to be serious, I'm serious, and you may not entertain the idea of a smile or fun or something creative, and it has to look a certain way, and and I think allowing people to be free and not say this is what it should be, not prescribing what it necessarily should be, but knowing themselves what they are comfortable with, what they're okay with, what their child is okay with, what their child really enjoys or connects with. I find that's important, because I think a lot of the things when it comes to sort of parenting is, let me just not jot that down, or what's the steps to go. And the reality is, when it comes to play, it's just that. It's fun, it's connecting, it's safe, and you can flow. And it often is going to look odd to other people who are not in that little play bubble, if you will, but that's okay. And being comfortable with that, and also at the same time, sometimes, it's not a silver bullet that's going to fix everything, but it does allow you to go on a journey with that child, that then can perhaps take them to the place you want to go. But I think for me, that's a big thing. That it's often like, well, what does that look like? What must it look like? And so, well, it must look like whatever it must look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and JD, I'll add this too. When early on in parenting, for me, it was first time obedience. It was like rules. It was like when dad says it, you do it. If I say jump, you ask how high. It was just always this. And when I began to learn about play, and I was told, like we've told, go play with kids. You can connect. Then I kind of took that to like, okay, I'm just going to be the fun guy. And I came running in from work, and I was like, and I was wreaking havoc on the house, like, because again, I had to learn, how do my children like to play?
Yeah.
And for some of my kids, especially older kids, I thought, well, being sarcastic and doing this kind of stuff would be real playful. Even today, when I've got kids in their 20s, they don't do sarcasm, but for some reason, I think that's real playful, and I'm just gonna, and so also it's play is not just about being silly and goofy and loud, and it's realizing, okay, reading the room, understanding the child, understand, in the home, I've got, 6 kiddos. So it's understanding their personalities, whether they're introvert, extrovert, if I said, let's go jump on the trampoline, man, they would want to do that in a heartbeat, and they would do it as long as I would, if we could jump for an hour, they would do it. Right. Some of my kiddos, that would be like terrible. That's the worst thing ever for them. Right. And so it's understanding your children, understanding yourself, and being able to play that. Again, the goal is connection. Yeah. Or one of the goals is connection. And so if that's the goal when I come in, then I want to do it in a way that they will want to connect. And so that was a learning process for me, that it's not just being silly, goofy, loud, grabbing them, throwing them on the ground, wrestling. For some that was offensive. And so I needed to learn how to play that was appropriate for each of my kiddos.
That's so true. Hey? How do we play? We've always got a purpose behind all our tools. Right. It might look like something on the surface, but underneath is like, I'm going somewhere. I just need you to come with me, and how best to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most important piece within this idea, is that it requires us, again, being students of our kids and knowing how they like to play, knowing what we talked a lot about in our Cultivate Connection course, the different styles of play, and everybody's got a preferred style of play. And so knowing that about ourselves and knowing that about our kids helps us to then better bridge some of those gaps. And Mo, you've talked before about, having kids who have a different play style than you. But once you realize it, knowing, okay, here's a way that I can engage with this kid specifically, and it might not be my same style, but I can go meet them where they're at that way, and build that bridge to connect in a more specific way. I think all the time about, on The Office, the American Office,
That was the best one, though. Just
the
put that
episode.
out.
I
The
agree.
best one.
The episode where Michael Scott is meeting one of Pam and Jim's friends for a date, and he shows up as Date Mike, and he's slinging the pool stick around. He's got his hat turned backward, and he's acting like a complete fool. And he like goes completely outside of himself. And Mo, I think about that when what you were sharing about like coming home wreaking havoc all the time. Sometimes we can get in our head that we have to now become like masters of comedy or something, and it can break connection. And so like acting within ourselves, knowing our kids, like helps to be able to bridge those gaps a little better. And I mean it also takes work to learn.
Yeah. It does. And real quick, and I know, JD, when we talk about the play types, I think it would be beneficial. Like, again, I said Stuart Brown originally. He's over the National Institute of Play, but he would say that the different play types are collectors, competitors, creators, artists, director, explorer, joker, storyteller, and then like the athlete, the body movement, the kinesthetic. And so knowing, like, beginning to realize that I've got some kids that are jokers, then I can be silly and joke, right? But also realizing I've got a kid that's a collector, and that means this kid's room is not necessarily a place that I need to battle, right? It was always like, clean your room. And it's like, you know what? When I backed up and realized, no, actually, in this area of his room, look what he's got collecting, and look what he's done. Then I need to just help him set up a room for his collection, things that are important for him. And so it just really, there were some, if I can just be honest, battles going on. But once I began to understand the wiring of my kiddos, play types, play personalities, whatever you want to call it, then it's super, super helpful. So
yeah. I'll change this next question because this is an American question. So we've been asking people, how are you planning on using this connecting practice this summer? So, Tom, in this American summer, your winter, how are you guys finding yourself using this practice?
I think we will be spending time inside. So my girls love dancing. So that's a great way for them to show, how bad I am at dancing. But it's just fun. It's fun for them just to see you busy all day, doing whatever profession. You come home, and that works for them. You're dancing with their silly music, engaging that way. Then you might have ones who are puzzles. My one son who's sitting off here, he loves his art. So you can sitting perhaps doing some of that with him. My eldest is, he's big. He loves gaming, which I don't. But you sitting and learning and understanding that world and being, I find, quite honestly, if you're able to use a few words in a teenager's life that make you sound like you know what's going on, you've won half the battle. But I think it is really getting down with what they are doing. I mean, the other night, my youngest was playing unicorns in the cupboard and putting them in the cupboard and getting on the floor. And this is another thing as well. It doesn't seem to be you're there for an hour. I think sometimes parents go, I don't have time.
Right.
I've got a series. And the reality is it was 10, 15 minutes after dinner. It was nice to be on the floor anyways. It was nice for me just to relax, but to have a unicorn or a My Little Pony in your hand, and the benefit of it for them, so it'll be inside, it'll be focused around little activities that they are doing, and really trying to capitalize on what they're doing, and not worrying that you're not outside in lengthy periods of time, not riding bikes or anything like that. One thing we do as well, even though it is cold, we love family walks and parks sort of around Joburg and that. And that can be quite fun. And that also sort of meets other needs, rides on the shoulder, piggybacks. There might be a little park around there that you can sort of factor that in as well. So
Yeah.
I think that's what we'll be doing. It would be nice if it was summer, because then we could start factoring in the pool and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
it indoors at the moment.
It is
and
interesting.
baking. You can bake, you can cook. That's what we'll be doing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to hearing you say that. Like there's, I mean, it's a lot of inside activities, but I think that's the same filter all of us are using. Like, can we think through what are the things, activities that our kids are really, choosing to engage in, wanting to engage in, and how can we take an interest in that and invest some time with them in that, and then have that outlet. And I think that's what, no matter what season we're in, I think that's definitely part of the equation here. It's just like finding activities and ways to connect and I think step out of our own interests for a moment to be able to like walk into their world and understand where they're at. And like you were talking about, learning those couple words for the teenagers that you can ask them about their gaming, or ask them about dance, or ask them about whatever. So I love that.
No,
Yeah, I would. Go ahead, Tom.
I'll just say, like if I'm in a class with kids and you can drop some anime names, you don't even have to know anything about them, just the titles, and all of a sudden your value is just it's
Isn't it amazing? Like I'll throw out some names and stuff like that, and all of a sudden I'm getting all kind of stories and updates, and I don't know any of it. I'm just with it,
Absolutely.
JD, I was going to say the power of child-led play.
Yeah.
I think just a parent saying, what do you want to do? And, I think, again, for me, for so long as a dad, I would come home and think about all the things that I needed to do. And it was, hey, I need to mow the yard. Wouldn't it be fun for y'all to ride on the riding lawnmower? And, it was always do something so I can get something done. And just the power of, no, I'm just going to sit on the floor. What do you want to do? You want to have tea? You want to play with My Little Ponies? You want to play chess? You want to jump in the swimming pool? Whatever it is, for them to know that they have your undivided attention. There's such power in that.
The power of the carpet.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing, I want to be part of it.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, and I was going to say this the other day, we were trying to get our kids to go in the pool, and they're like, no, we're tired. And I was like, I'm going in. And all of a sudden they're like, yeah, they're, and it's, again, I just want to encourage parents at the end of the day, that's what they want. They deeply want to connect with you. And, again, we've got kids ranging from 23 to 11. And at the end of the day, in their own way, they all want to connect with you, and it's going to look different. And you're going to go on some adventures and go to some things and watch some things and, play video games and do all the things that you didn't think you were going to do. But at the end of the day, the goal is connecting with my kiddo. And that's the great journey we get to go on.
I think that is so key. They want to connect. Even with parents that say, oh, my kid just doesn't care. It's like, maybe they've learned that you don't want to connect. So they're going to put up a front as if they don't want to. But when they see genuinely that, hey, he's in the pool, he actually wants to do this now, that's a core need.
Yeah.
I want to connect with you. I just maybe don't know how, or I've experienced that you don't want to do it. So, when you do it, even if you might get a little bit of pushback at first, just keep doing it, and just keep opening yourself up to the opportunity and positioning yourself that, hey, I'm willing.
Yeah.
How
and
high
I think,
can you jump over it in that pool?
And I think the more you do it, because I think we all as adults have to own the fact that we don't do a great job playing. Right. And so I think the more we can help, we can play and be fully present with our kiddos. We develop a culture of play in our home. Then it also, the big shift in our home that I kind of alluded to at the beginning of this was like, there are times that we have to have some structure in our home, and there's some time, but you can totally use play to redirect, or like, it doesn't have to escalate. All of a sudden, if play is just the norm, and again, I'm not talking about silly, jokey, all that stuff all the time, but like when there is a playful engagement, then there can all that when we have to correct, when there has to be structure, we can do it in a playful way that they don't even know that that's what's happening, you know?
Yeah, no, that's so cool.
Yeah. Last question here. So what is your favorite example of this connecting practice in a movie, book, or TV show? Tom,
Oh, goodness.
I'll give you the rights to go first on this one.
Tom, this is totally you.
You know, I was actually thinking the other day, Liar Liar, you know that movie with Jim Carrey, and he's got the claw.
Yes.
I love that one because you've got the same action. You've got, you know, Jim Carrey doing the claw, and obviously he's doing it Jim Carrey style, so it's really over the top and involved and all the rest of it. And then you got the mom's boyfriend at the time doing the same thing, which is, you know, it's really not as well animated as Jim Carrey, but it's fascinating because that it obviously it's a movie, but it's a point of connection. It's a game for the dad and the son. Other people can play the exact same game, but it doesn't have the same meaning. And I love how you've got just one guy who has this claw, and it doesn't matter where you are. And all of a sudden the claw comes out. And, you know, it can be silly, and I know it can be annoying for the mom in the program, but I love the idea when I was thinking about it, because it was their thing. Mm-hmm. It was their thing, and anybody else who did it, it wasn't the same, because it was just it was an example of their connection just working itself out.
Great example.
Yeah, I thought that was a great one.
There's a similar, well, it's not, it's a similar claw deal, but if you search on either Instagram or just, you can search on YouTube, the dinosaur.
Oh yes. That also.
Oh, there's some daughters that always drive their mom crazy by, they'll ask in the middle of they're doing something, cutting birthday cake or walking through the mall or something, and they'll say, "Wait, Dinosaur, is that you?" And the dad immediately transforms into this like Jim Carrey level animated dinosaur. And like, they want the birthday cake. You know, whatever. I have no idea if it's a bit, they're just doing it for the content. It's hilarious. I don't care what they are. Yeah, the mom gives very genuine, sincere, like she's sick of it reactions, which always makes me laugh so much harder. And then he grabs the entire cake and starts smushing it into his face like a dinosaur. And it's really funny. There have been times where if we have one kid that we can tell is upset about something and they're playing it up more than they're really upset, but they're just, taking liberty to be upset. And again, I give the disclaimer of, you have to know your kids, because sometimes this will be awful and backfire. But with this particular kid, we know sometimes, they're just trying to be too cool or trying to, act like, oh, dumb parents, dumb adults. I'm a teenager. I'm way cooler than this. But I will sometimes like fall on the floor and start being like, no, he doesn't want us to go. And it is every time it has gotten him to crack and to be like, get up. Oh my gosh, this is the worst. I'm fine. Come on, let's go. Come on. But then later on, they'll talk about it and they'll mimic it and show it. And it's really gret.
I remember my son's first birthday. He was having a birthday cake, and I think he just sort of got his hands in there and started eating. And I thought, this is the way to go. And so I stuck my head in it. And you've got grandparents in the background, like, no, that's not what you do with a birthday cake. But that memory is still there. The photo is still there. Just like the kid jumped in. Who cares? Jump in with the kid.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I can't remember any other birthday cake other than the one where we both just stuck our heads in and started eating it, and that was led by him. Yes, he was one, and maybe it was other reasons behind it, but it was fun, it was memorable, and now there's a story with that, and it was just following them in the moment. And also, how cool is it to do something like that, and like, oh, I've done something wrong, and then all of a sudden the adult in the room jumps on board and does it with you, and it just creates something. It creates a bond, it creates a story that it strengthens that connection. So I just think that's cool.
And very few people who are looking on see that and just say, oh my God, will you look at him? He's he's being silly.
What a waste of
child. Don't need too much of that. Yeah, that it is. But people always, I think we always fear. I find myself, I'll speak for myself, implicitly fearing people's responses at a level that's so deep I don't even realize it initially. And when I'll kind of pause and ask myself, like, why am I so apprehensive about something? It's almost always because of that. And yet when I allow myself to be free enough to play with our kids, I mean, Mo, talk about parking lots. We have one who loves to run through a parking lot, and I don't know if she's destined for a life of, stunts and daredevil stuff, whatever, but like we had to, we worked with her therapist and I came up with kind of a plan, like, okay, hey, plan for safety. Let's do this. But then we have to turn it into a game to go. And so there's times that I'm like in work clothes, hopping like Elf across the crosswalk as we go walk somewhere with her and laughing. And it's hard to get used to doing that in the beginning, because I think like all these people are watching me do this. And then if I continue that thought, it's like all these people are watching me like act like an idiot with my kid, and she's laughing and I'm laughing and we're having a great time and they're probably enjoying it too. Like there's no downside to that. Like people genuinely, very, very few people on earth would watch that interaction and think, oh, this is outrageous.
What a terrible dad.
Yeah. What a horrible
I would very much like to see a clip of you hopping like an elf, by the way.
I'll get you one. I'll get you one.
If you can do that, I'd really appreciate it.
Okay. I actually, for speaking of just the loss of any embarrassment factor, I have a neighbor who is roughly the size of Will Ferrell. And he's just a giant dude. And our neighborhood has these Christmas parties every year. So the neighborhood association kind of, we'll go to one person's house, everybody brings food and stuff, and we have big potluck and all that. Well, there is in our neighborhood a guy who owns the local costume shop. And so he will always provide whatever costume is necessary for that event. So for the Easter egg hunt every year, there's a giant, terrifying looking Easter bunny. For Halloween is usually something that we have to veto and say that is absolutely the demonic and we're not doing that. Or there will be for Christmas, there was the Santa suit. Well, this year he was like, hey, get somebody else to help you because I've also got Buddy the Elf. And unfortunately, this guy was new to the neighborhood and I was the only person that he knew well enough. And so we walk our kids down to the Christmas party and I was like, whoa, guys, I need to go to the bathroom. I'm going to go back to the house real quick. I'll be right back. And so I run back to meet Jody and we change into our costumes and I don't know why we didn't drive. We walked, it's almost half a mile. We walked so long through the neighborhood.
That's to the story, man. That's why.
But we walk into the party as Buddy the Elf and Santa. And I just decided to follow. And he told me that for the last, and I think this is a great, just file this away for your ideas, everyone who's listening. For the last like 7 or 8 years, his kids think it's really funny when he, does things that he get away with playing with them when they were tiny. Now they're all like, the youngest one's 8, the oldest one's 15. So he still every year puts on a Buddy the Elf costume and will run in on Christmas morning and go, guys, Santa, he was here. And they're all like, oh, come on, Dad. And he's like, your dad's here too. Where is he? I want to meet him. And he just stays in full character for like 45 minutes on Christmas morning. And he's been doing it since they were little. And they used to think it was really funny. Now, like they all look forward to it, even though they groan when he runs in the room and he just hams it up the entire time. And so we did that in the party and all the kids are coming up being like, why are you wearing that costume? And I'm like, who's wearing a costume? I love costumes. So there are lots of pictures that are now in the annals of our neighborhood's newsletters with me in this costume.
I'd like a copy of that as well when you're sending that.
That one can't travel overseas. I'm sorry. Well, okay. Any last words on this from either of you guys, from Mo or Tom? Just kind of last words of encouragement for people who think about, I would say, folks who hear this and they're like, I hear you that I need to do this and this. I don't know how to do this. Any last words for those guys?
Well, like anything, it's going to take practice. I mean, that seems weird to say, but honestly, like I said, for me, when I first kind of dove into changing my parenting style and wanted to be all playful, I kind of was over the top, goofy, silly. And so I just needed to learn how to play. And that was a shift. It was a shift for our kids too, and so just know that it's gonna, it's gonna take time, and like anything, you'll get better as you do it. But again, the goal is connection with your kiddo. And like you just said, there's stories, there's things that our kids will remember because of the intentionality of playing.
Yeah. And I just think it's the biggest, cheapest gesture that you can make to just really enforce, hey, maybe I need this relationship to change, or you've got a need that I want to meet. And, for a child to sit there and, have dad come home in a big snazzy suit and go, geez, I'm important enough for him to get on the floor and play with me. It really doesn't take anything out of us, and it really doesn't take too much of our facets and stuff to figure anything out. But the message that it drives home, that I've got a voice, I'm the focus here. I've never been the focus before. I'm important enough, and the child can see it, the child can feel it, the child can hear it. It's just embedded in their mind and their memories. And I just think it's fun, and it's. With all the seriousness, quite honestly, in the world right now, what a wonderful tool that is healing and is just also such a joy to use. So that's. I just think it's so powerful.
I agree so much, guys. Thank y'all both so much for joining us today.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, again, a huge thank you to Tom, and just loved getting to talk with him for a little bit. And my hope is that maybe this episode can lessen the pressure that we feel sometimes to play. It's so important to know our play style, to know our kids' play style, and then to know how to bridge that gap together. And so hopefully this episode at least began to shed light on how that process can happen. So we are so excited to have had Tom on. We're so excited to be continuing in this series of having our Cultivate Connection facilitators with us. And so we are going to continue having them with us throughout the rest of the summer. And so if you're listening to this live, we got several more weeks left of having Cultivate Connection facilitators on and talking about our connecting practices. And so we're hopeful that you'll join us. We're hopeful that these things are being helpful. These episodes are helpful for you. Let us know in a review or in a comment on our posts on social media if these episodes have been helpful for you or not. With all that said, without any further ado, for Kyle Wright, who edits and engineers all of our audio, for Tad Jewett, the creator of the music behind the Empowered to Connect podcast, and for everybody here at Empowered to Connect, I'm JD Wilson, and we will see you next week on the ETC podcast.